sum up Keir Starmer's first year in number 10 in a word, I would say testing. Highlights for me include pouring money into public services, restoring Britain's place on the world stage after years of Tory Brexit wars, a few lowlights, early mistake on the winter fuel cut, which has since been partly reversed, and the government's disability benefit cuts, which were gutted this week in the face of a Labour revolt.
So Keir Starmer in his first year in number 10 has built up something of a reputation as Europe's Trump whisperer. And he's done that by being overwhelmingly nice to him. At some point, Donald Trump is going to do something that is manifestly unacceptable. And at that point, Keir Starmer has to decide whether it's finally time for him to do his best Hugh Grant in Love Actually impression and tell his old pal, Britain won't stand for these things anymore.
During the last 14 years of Conservative rule, our criminal justice system has been starved of cash. It's really hit victims of crime and everyone working in the police, courts and prison system. The Labour Party's turned that around in the last year. They've really promised a lot more money, but even more cash needs to be put towards the criminal justice system if we're going to see real change.
Education has been an area where Labour have been wanting to shout from the rooftops about. They've announced free breakfast clubs for all primary school children, supervised toothbrushing and a huge expansion of free school meals, but they've definitely faced some heat, especially over their plan to end tax breaks for private schools. Now, Bridget Phillipson has stuck to her guns on that to save money from them to be able to plunge into state schools.
The most unpopular and messy issue for Labour. It started just weeks after the general election when Rachel Reeves announced the scrapping of the winter fuel payment. But perhaps the low point of Labour when it comes to welfare was just this week. You had these sort of shambolic scenes in the Commons over the welfare bill. But one of the high points has probably been the renters reform bill. And the idea was that it scrapped what's called as a Section 21 notice, which allows landlords to evict tenants on a whim and without reason. There has been some sort of commitments on social housing and affordable homes, but I think charities want to see the government go quite a lot further on this issue.
John Healey, the Defence Secretary, and his team have made progress in weapons procurement, trying to simplify it, troops housing and pay, boosting the defence budget, and continuing to support Ukraine. However, they will have to move at pace against growing threats from Russia and other hostile states. The low point has to be the exposure of former Admiral Sir Ben Key, the first Sea Lord, having an affair with a subordinate.
In just days of taking power, Labour doubled onshore wind plans, backed renewables and stopped a new coal mine. They've cracked down on polluting water companies by threatening jail time for bosses. But it's just not enough. Taxing fossil fuel giants could also support communities hit by climate disasters. And it's time to hit back at misinformation, explaining net zero will cut bills and clean up our air.
The UK was actually the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first 3 months of 2025, but it's stop-start and it's expected to weaken. Inflation's still stubbornly high and food bills have started picking up again. The budget tax rate went down like a lead balloon. Firms need more incentives to turn on the investment tap, and that'll help revive growth.
The net migration, which is the overall number of people coming to live in Britain, has fallen. Keir Starmer said he would. He said that's a key pledge. But the small boats crisis remains the most visible sign, and that's way up on previous years. Keir Starmer knows he can't have another 6 months like that. So if Labour's going to deliver growth like it says it is, then getting transport rights is going to be integral to that. And they've been ambitious on this front. Within days of the election, they laid down legislation to nationalise the railways, which they say will make life a lot easier for commuters. There's also been huge investment announced. In June, Rachel Reeves announced $15 billion for transport projects across the UK, but the key is going to be delivery.
Sir Keir Starmer's government has brought about the first sustained drop in the NHS waiting list in England in over a decade. The problem is the NHS had deteriorated to such an extent that for most patients they may not have noticed yet that it has started to improve. Deep-rooted problems persist, and for the government's ambitious NHS reform plans to succeed, they would need to be backed by sustained funding increases from the Treasury.
Going forward, I think Keir Starmer needs to really spell out to voters what he stands for. He needs to double down on the stuff that's really important, really hammer that home, and level with people about what the challenges are and how he's going to fix them.